I'm Amanda, and I'd like to thank you for purchasing the Bat Real Estate Kit. Now, to start out with, we'll go through what you have in your kit and what it's made of. So what we have are 7 of these 14-inch cedar planks. If you may have been in some of our other ritual programming, I'm usually the eco-friends girl, so I like to make my projects as sustainable as possible. To that end, these are very affordable, and if you happen to have cedar fence pickets in your yard and they're not looking so good, you can always use 1 or 2 of those in order to make your bat house as well. We try to use cedar because it does have some properties that will cut down on parasites, for one, and because it holds up in weather. It's also rough on the edges, so this is a rough hewn cedar, so it gives them something to grab onto, so you won't have to use that plastic mesh that we often put in bat houses. All right, so you have 7 of those, 1 of which has a 1x1 already screwed onto it. This 1x1 is a predator guard, and so this will go on the front half toward the bottom. So just keep track of where that is. You have a bag of some exterior grade screws. I've already taken mine out of the bag. You have 2 pieces of 2x1s that have a little angle at the top. You have a tube of caulk, which I don't have with mine because this is my example and I'll be taking it apart when I'm done so that I can use it to show others how to put it together. And then you also have a 16-inch piece of the cedar that you'll be using as a roof. And unfortunately, I didn't count properly when we put these kits together. And my example one doesn't have a full 16-inch piece. It's got a kind of a split piece. So I think you'll still get the idea though. All right, so this bat house is not going to be the BMW or Rolls-Royce of bat houses. This bat house is meant to be a simple and affordable and useful bat house, but not very shiny and exciting. It's more of like the Ford Fiesta or the Toyota Camry of bat houses. And so what we're going to start out with is by placing 4 of your cedar planks in a row, and this will be the back of your bat house. And then make sure the angled parts are on the same side, and you'll put these along the screw, the holes. And I tried to drill the holes into the wood so that they would all be together. But if they don't line up properly, feel free to drill a new hole. And you want some space at either end. So this board should have about 1 inch at the top left. And then your bottom board that doesn't have the angle, that has the flat one, should have at least 1 inch or so too. I'll try this a better way. And you'll want the longer edge of the angled portion to be against your board. Then you will take your drill. So once you have your back on, at this point, for the back, if you have small gaps, this is where your caulk comes in handy. You can snip off the edge of your caulk and use a napkin or something and just beat it along the back edges here to seal up those gaps. And if there's any gaps along here, you can do that as well. It's definitely easier to take care of the caulk now instead of when you're putting the back, once you've put the back on. So I try to squeeze my predator guard in between the two railings here, for lack of a better word, and that's going to go toward the flat end. So we do want to put just a little bit of a gap there, and then we'll put our other boards on. We're going to want about a finger's gap between the second and third board. This will be their ventilation. And then this board should be up by the top. So once you've got, you could also do it the easier way and just do the top board up at the angled end. And that should be right under the angle. And then your second one goes against it. And then you do a finger gap here. And that gives you a little bit of a landing area so the bats can come in for a landing and then climb up. And then we're going to drill again. My drill battery seems to have died, so I'm going to just switch to a screwdriver. So now that I'm on to using a screwdriver, don't expect mine to look the best. All right, so some of the features that every bat house should have are going to be something that is the predator guard. You're going to want ventilation. You want it to be very narrow. If you see this bat house, it's only 2 inches wide, and that's because bats aren't very big here in Michigan. Our largest bat would not use a bat house, actually, but our second largest bat is the most common one found in bat houses, and they have a 12-inch wingspan. That's wingtip to wingtip, but they only show that wingspan usually when they're flying, and they do not fly inside the house. Can you imagine the bat mom saying, no flying in the house? No, this is where they are going to be spending their days. It's where they're going to be nursing their babies. And so they like to be really close up tight with their friends. And a bat house this size will fit around 50 or so big brown bats and their babies. So we've got this far, and then we're going to take our 16-inch wide piece and put that on the top as the roof. You have a 16-inch wide piece, but it's not quite the 4 inches that most of yours are. So my roof probably would not keep it too dry. So what we're gonna do is just put that on our angled roof. And the roof, particularly, if you can, you're going to want to caulk along the edge here where it meets the back. And also, you may want to caulk where the roof meets the angled portions of the side pieces, just to make sure that all the water is not dripping into the bat house. There we have it. It's a simple, quick and easy bat house with 16 screws, and it's all together. So now what do you want to do with it? Well, one of the things you would do with it is obviously hang it up. The quicker the better. We used to tell people to paint them a dark color, but with temperatures being the way that they have been shifting, that's no longer necessary and can actually be harmful. It can get to be too hot in bat houses now. We still want morning sun. Our goal is about 100 degrees by noon during the spring and summer, because that's when the mommy bats have their babies, and those babies are born naked without any fur at all. So they need to be kept warm, but we also don't want the moms to overheat. That's part of why we have a ventilation slot in the bat house, is so that the babies can stay up at the top and mom can come down and get a breath of fresh air, get away from the kids for a little while, and still be protected from predators. So a bat house like this, we would want to put between 12 and 15 feet off the ground, not in a live tree, because bats that live in bat houses prefer dead trees. But the reason that we're building a bat house instead of leaving a bunch of dead trees up is because most people don't want a dead tree in their backyard that could fall on their house or their garage or their car or their child or their pet. So what you're going to do is, the best place is to put it on the side of a building. You can put it on a pole or a post. If you can combine these things. If you have a garage or shed with a high peak, you can put a flagpole on there, and that can give you the extra few feet. If you're comfortable putting it on the side of your chimney, that's a good place as well. Yeah, so there are all different kinds of ways you can put it. You want the access to the bottom to be clear. You don't want a lot of shrubbery or brush or things underneath it. You want them to have a way that they can drop into flight. And again, our goal is about 100 degrees by noon. That's the dream. The best way I can think of to make that so is to try it. Put a thermometer out where you would like to put your bat house. I know it's a pain going 12 to 15 feet up, but it'll give you better results in having your bat house. Now, bats are very, very loyal to their roosts. So that means they'll keep coming back to it as often as they possibly can. That's a good sign once they move in, because as soon as your bat house is up and they've moved in and they're like, we like this place, they'll keep coming back to it unless it falls apart 20 or 30 years down the line. But when it's getting them into the bat house for the first time, it can take a little while, because if where they're living is a dying tree, then they're not going to move out until that tree falls over. So it can take about 2 years for bats to actually move into your bat house, even if it's placed in the right location. But knowing that they live in a dead and dying tree, bats will often always be on the lookout for a new suitable place to live. So the bats that would live in a bat house like this here in Michigan would be our crevice-dwelling bats. I mentioned the big brown bat. That is the most common bat found here in Michigan, and it's the most common one found really across the United States. You can find this bat. It is a colony rooster, so it roosts in groups of hundreds of bats, or sometimes 20s of bats. These are the female bats that will roost together, and the males will be more in small clusters of maybe 2 or 3, or even by themselves. Big brown bats are a very suburban bat. They don't mind being around people. They'll even be an urban bat. If you go out to the streetlights at night and you throw a marshmallow up, you might see them diving for that. All of our bats here in Michigan are insectivores, which means they eat insects, and tons of them. So not just the mosquitoes that we often say we need a bat around, that they've kind of got that reputation because people want people to like bats. But they also eat a lot of moths and beetles and a lot of our crop pests. So if you have a garden, bats are great for gardens because they will eat a lot of the things that eat our tomatoes, our cucumbers, and our corn on the cob. All things that I love out of the garden in the summertime. So things like tomato hornworms that grow into the sphinx moth. They eat the moth version. They eat the cucumber beetle, and they eat corn rootworm beetles. And that's all of the bats here in Michigan would be happy to dine on any of those things. When I say crevice dwelling, that doesn't mean that they live in caves. What it means is that they live usually in the peeling bark of a dead or dying tree. And they'll live there with their families, which is a good thing because there aren't a lot of natural caves here in Michigan. We have a few that the Great Lakes have carved out along the edges of the state, the coastline of the state. But we don't have any naturally occurring limestone caves like they do in other states. So these crevice-dwelling bats also tend to hibernate, and they will hibernate inside caves or the closest things they can get to. And here in Michigan, the closest thing they can get are usually our abandoned copper mines up in the Upper Peninsula. So our bats that hibernate usually have to migrate in order to hibernate. They have to move up before they can overwinter. Bats are true hibernators, which means that their heartbeat, when they are flying around the night sky, hunting really fast, is around 300 to 400 beats per minute. And when the wintertime comes and they go into torpor and they go into hibernation, their heart rate slows down from going really fast at 400 beats per minute, 200 beats per minute at rest on a summer night, down to 2 to 4 beats per minute. So it slows down by 99%. Wow. The other crevice-dwelling bats here in Michigan include the little brown bat, which becomes the most populous bat once you get to about Mackinac City and Mackinac Island and points north of that. So if you have a cabin up north, those are the bats that you would most likely find there. They're very similar to the big brown bat, but one of their field marks is that they have long toe hairs. Most people don't get close enough to actually see that, other than bat researchers. But again, very similar to our big brown bat, crevice roosting, and the females will form large colonies. The silver-haired bat is another crevice-dwelling bat, and they don't form the large colonies like the big brown and little brown will. They'll usually just stick with their young of the summer, or be solitary bats. The evening bat is a crevice-dwelling bat that lives just in the very lower part of Michigan. If you are in Oakland County, some parts of the county may have these, and some may not. It's a very woolly furred bat. Their fur is very thick, and it's a smaller bat. The northern long-eared bat is also a crevice-dwelling bat, and they have long ears. They're also not found very far into the state. Another bat that you don't find very often here in Michigan is what was once called the eastern pipistrelle and is now called the tricolor bat. That one is our smallest bat. It's only got about a 6-inch wingspan, and it's only found on the very western edge of the Upper Peninsula. So this one, you would have to be by where the abandoned copper mines are in order to find it at any time of year. The last of the crevice-dwelling bats found here in Michigan is also found just barely in Michigan, maybe as far north as here in Oakland County, is the Indiana bat. This is a federally endangered bat. They usually roost in large groups inside hollow shagbark hickories, and they are a very protected species. So the other type of bat that is not crevice dwelling would be one that lives in live trees. There are just a couple of these here in Michigan, and those are my personal favorite insectivorous bat, the hoary bat, which is Hoary, hoary as in hoary frost, because it looks like it has frosted tips from the 90s. This bat has very distinctive fur. It is the largest bat found in Michigan with a wingspan of about 15 inches. And this bat is not commonly caught when we're misnetting for bats because it flies very high in the canopies. The hoary bat will often be found in coniferous forests, and if you look at it when it's all curled up with its wings wrapped around it, it looks a little bit like a pine cone. So do you think that helps them out when they're roosting on a pine tree? Probably. The bats in this genus are known for having fuzzy little tails that they wrap around themselves as a blanket, which is pretty adorable. Another one of these bats that is a live tree bat, also with the little fuzzy blanket tail, is the eastern red bat. So this one is sexually dimorphic. The males are a bright orangey red color, while the females are more of a darker auburn color. This bat will roost in live trees, but more of the deciduous trees. And so when they're curled up, they often look like a little piece of fruit, maybe a crab apple, or a dead leaf. And this can help them escape predators. So those are the 9 species of bats found here in Michigan. A little bit of direction on where to put your bat house and how to put it together. For more information, feel free to contact us at Oakland County Parks. We do have at the end of April, April 22nd and 23rd, we'll be doing some bat chats out in our field. So check out our website for more information about those. Bring a blanket or a chair to sit in, and we'll let the bats come to us. Have a great night and enjoy some bats in flight.